Another fantastic weekend of college football is in the books. I won't waste any more time, so here are my top 25 teams after week 6 of the college football season. Last week I did a video talking about what was wrong with Georgia. Well, I think they must have shown the video in the film room or something, because they had by far their best game of the season as they took down number 20 Kentucky 51-13. Carson Beck had his best game of the year as he threw for 400 yards with 4 passing touchdowns. Meanwhile, the Georgia defense is as good as advertised. They held Kentucky to only 13 points, 12 first downs, and only 180 yards of total offense. Safe to say, Georgia is back to looking like the best team in all of college football. This was a back and forth game that was actually tied midway through the third quarter, but Ohio State managed to outscore Maryland 20-0 the rest of the way to give them a very comfortable lead. Maryland gave the Buckeyes a good fight, but this was a 5-0 team coming into the contest. Kyle McCord threw for 300 yards with 2 passing touchdowns and had one of his better games of the entire season. Ohio State also did a really solid job holding this Maryland offense in check. I mean, they held them to only 17 points and 300 yards of total offense. It's taken some time, but Ohio State is finally looking like one of the best teams in all of college football. Florida State moved to 5-0 with their 39-17 victory over Virginia Tech. Trey Benson led the way for the Seminoles as he rushed for 200 yards on only 11 carries. He had 2 rushing touchdowns and averaged more than 18 yards per carry. Johnny Wilson also led the way in the receiving game as he caught 4 passes for 2 touchdowns. Another blowout for the Michigan Wolverines. They took down Minnesota 52-10. JJ McCarthy had another great game as he threw for 200 yards with a passing touchdown while also adding 2 touchdowns on the ground as well. As a team, the Wolverines rushed for 200 yards with 4 rushing scores. Their defense continues to look like one of the best in the entire country. They held Minnesota to only 10 first downs and 170 yards of total offense. The only reason I don't have Michigan higher is because, well, the best team they've played this season might have been Minnesota this past weekend. After their impressive victory, I got Oklahoma moving all the way up. They took down number 3 Texas 34-30. This was a back and forth game, and it honestly looked like Oklahoma wouldn't have enough at the end, but Dylan Gabriel led them down the field for the upset victory. Gabriel threw for 300 yards with a passing touchdown while also being the Sooners' leading rusher with over 100 yards on the ground and a rushing score. I mean, seriously, he had 400 yards of total offense and 2 touchdowns. He is the reason Oklahoma won this game. Oklahoma is back, and they're looking like a potential national championship contender. Washington was off this weekend, so here's where I got them ranked. Oregon was also off this weekend, so here's where I got them ranked as well. We're just going to keep up this trend as Penn State was also off, so here's where I got them ranked this week. Alright, we finally got a team that played, and it's Texas. Now, I didn't want to drop them too much because they were just seconds away from winning this game over Oklahoma, but still, it wasn't a good look for the Longhorns. Although they still had a chance to win this game very late, it wasn't an overall great performance from the Longhorns. I mean, sure, they did have over 500 yards of total offense, but they had 3 costly turnovers. I mean, it seemed like they kept giving Oklahoma chances to stay in this game. And it turns out the turnovers proved costly as the Sooners escaped with a 4-point victory. We all thought Texas was back, but by losing a game like this, I'm not so sure if that's the case anymore. USC somehow managed to win this game in triple overtime as they took down Arizona by 2 points. If you watched any of this game, it was ugly, and the fact that USC somehow escaped with the victory is actually crazy. I mean, Arizona looked like the better team on both sides of the ball, and USC had a number of costly mistakes, but they made the plays when it mattered most, especially in overtime, and they were able to get the victory. Caleb Williams had probably his worst game of the season as he completed only 14-25 passes for 200 yards. He only had 1 passing touchdown as well, but he did add 3 touchdowns on the ground. USC is somehow still undefeated, but man, that is 3 consecutive games in which they were a heavy favorite that they really struggled in. Early on, it was looking like Alabama was going to be an upset watch, but they turned things around in the second half to knock off Texas A&M. Jalen Milroe did it all for the Tide as he threw for over 300 yards with 3 passing touchdowns. Jermaine Burton also had quite the day through the air as he caught 9 passes for 200 yards and 2 receiving scores. I thought Texas A&M's offense was going to do a little more, but the Tide really held them in check for this game. A&M had only 16 first downs and only 67 yards on the ground, averaging less than 2 yards a carry. It hasn't been pretty, but Alabama's won every game since that Texas loss, and they're still hanging around in the national championship discussion. Louisville continues their incredible season as they move to 6-0 with a 33-20 victory over Notre Dame. Turns out the Cardinals are for real, and they're a legitimate threat in the ACC. The MVP of the offense was Jahar Jordan, who rushed for 150 yards with 2 rushing scores. Meanwhile, the Louisville defense stepped up as they held Notre Dame to only 17 first downs and less than 300 yards of total offense. I mean, they held the Irish to only 44 yards on the ground as they averaged only 1.5 yards per attempt. The offense stepped up, the defense stepped up, and this is a Cardinal team that is the best we've seen since Lamar Jackson was there. North Carolina had another dominating victory as they took down Syracuse by 33 points. Drake May continues his Heisman campaign as he threw for over 440 yards with 3 passing touchdowns. He also had 60 yards on the ground with a rushing score as well. I know I just talked about Louisville being a potential threat in the ACC, but North Carolina is hanging around as well. I know everyone's talking about Florida State as the team to beat, but there are a number of ACC teams that are looking like they're up for the test. This was a fun one if you like a lot of points, as Oregon State took down Cal 52-40. DJ Uiagalelei had himself quite the day as he threw for 300 yards with 5 passing touchdowns and no interceptions. Meanwhile, as a team, the Beavers rushed for over 200 yards on the ground. I'm not going to pay close attention to what Oregon State's defense did, considering they allowed 40 points and nearly 500 yards of total offense, but a win is a win, and Oregon State picked up another in the Pac-12. Before I get to the rest of my rankings, I'd like to share with you guys how you can win money and make the college football season even more exciting. I've partnered with Underdog Fantasy to bring you this amazing deal. If you download the Underdog app and use promo code Harris, they'll match your first deposit up to $100. That's right, they're giving you up to $100 of free money. So make sure to use promo code Harris for a 100% deposit match up to $100. You can also sign up using the link in my description as well. After last week's close victory, Ole Miss had another close one as they took down Arkansas by 7 points. Arkansas had the lead with about 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter, but Ole Miss managed to outscore them 10-0 the rest of the way to pick up the hard-earned victory. Jackson Dart had an okay game as he threw for only 150 yards with the touchdown, but luckily Ole Miss's rushing attack was what won them the game. They combined to rush for 200 yards with 2 rushing scores. The defense also stepped up as they forced 2 turnovers that really helped keep points off the board for Arkansas. The Pac-12 continues to impress as UCLA took down number 13 Washington State 25-17. Dante Moore threw for 300 yards with a passing touchdown, while Carson Steele rushed for 140 yards on the ground. The offense didn't do a whole lot for UCLA, but it was their defense that really won the game for them. They held this Washington State offense to only 11 first downs for the entire game. The Cougars were 2 of 13 on third down and had just over 200 yards of total offense. The craziest takeaway is the fact that the Cougars had only 12 rushing yards for the entire game. They averaged 0.6 yards per rushing attempt. The Bruins also forced 4 Washington State turnovers as well. It was a dominant effort on both sides of the ball, and UCLA is back inside the top 25. Tennessee was off this weekend, so here's where I got them ranked. Things weren't looking good early on for LSU on the road at Missouri. They were trailing by 15 points in the second quarter, but after that point, they managed to outscore the Tigers by 25 points. Even late in the fourth quarter, Missouri managed to have a 4-point lead. But a touchdown with 3 minutes left and a pick 6 gave LSU the comfortable 10-point victory. Jaden Daniels had yet another fantastic performance. He threw for 260 yards with 3 passing touchdowns, while also adding 130 yards on the ground with a rushing score as well. Logan Diggs also had an incredible day as he rushed for 130 yards with a score as well. This was a massive win for LSU because they're still alive in the SEC title contention. Utah was off this week, so here's where I got them ranked. Duke was also off this weekend, so here's where I got them ranked as well. Washington State had their first loss of the season as they fell on the road to UCLA. This was a quiet day for the offense as Cameron Ward completed only 19 of 39 passes for fewer than 200 yards. He only threw 1 passing touchdown and had 2 interceptions. Meanwhile, as a team, they had only 12 yards on the ground. Washington State is still alive in the Pac-12 discussion, but after this loss, there are 4 teams that are ahead of them in the conference standings. They're also tied with 2 other teams as well, so they got a lot of ground to make up if they want any chance of reaching the Pac-12 title game. Early on, it was looking like Missouri was going to pick up a massive win, but they fell apart in the second half as they lost to LSU by 10. Like I mentioned earlier, Missouri actually led this game with only a couple minutes remaining, but they couldn't put together the plays needed to pull off the win. Brady Cook was still fantastic as he threw for over 400 yards with 2 passing touchdowns. Cody Schrader added over 100 yards on the ground with 3 rushing scores as well. Considering they're in the same division as Georgia, we're probably not going to be seeing Missouri playing in the SEC title game, but still, they have a chance to have one of the better seasons among all the SEC teams. After last weekend's tough loss against Texas, Kansas responded nicely with a 30-point victory over UCF. The Jayhawks dropped 51 points on the night. The crazy thing is, quarterback Jason Bean only completed 8 passes and threw the ball 12 times for 90 yards. The Jayhawks did all the damage on the ground as they rushed for 400 yards and 5 rushing scores. Devin Neal had 150 yards with a rushing score, while Daniel Hishaw Jr. had 130 yards with 2 scores. Dylan McDuffie also got into the action and had 90 yards with 2 rushing scores as well. After having such promise, it's been a rough couple of weeks for Notre Dame as they fell by 13 points on the road at Louisville. Sam Hartman just didn't get the job done as he threw 3 costly interceptions. Audric Estime had also his worst game of the season as he rushed for only 20 yards on 10 attempts. After looking like a national championship contender just a couple weeks ago, Notre Dame's chances are completely shot. But hey, at least they have a 12-team playoff starting next year. We'll wrap things up with the group of 5 team as the Wyoming Cowboys move to 5-1 with their 5-point victory over number 24 Fresno State. Wyoming was actually leading this game pretty comfortably entering the half as they led 24-7. They were outscored 12-0 in the second half, but they still managed to pull out the victory. Meanwhile, for Wyoming now, they're 5-1 on the season, and you can make the case they're the best group of 5 team in all of college football. Well, those are my top 25 teams after week 6. Was there a team I had ranked too high or ranked too low? Or was there a team that didn't crack my top 25 at all that should have been in here? Whoever it is, let me know in the comment section down below. Before you leave, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to my channel. I'm posting college football videos every day during the season, so make sure to subscribe so you never miss a video. Also, don't forget to drop a like on this video as well. It helps out with that YouTube algorithm and helps share the video with more college football fans. Plus, it only takes a second to do. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video.